This is Robin here with Horror Pop After Midnight. I'm at the Horrorhound Film Festival in Cincinnati. I'm here with filmmaker, writer, producer, cinematographer, John Isberg. How's it going?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's been crazy, awesome time here at Horrorhound. So yeah, thanks again for taking time out.
Yeah, let's talk about your film, Final Summer. I knew that took you in 3 years in the making. You had different drafts, and when you finally filmed it, was it pretty hard and emotional for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, the film was a very personal film, actually, just because of I didn't want to make a slasher film about a killer in the woods. I wanted to make a slasher film about being a survivor, because just in my personal life, I also am a survivor of a pretty abusive situation and had a lot of PTSD from that. And so I started to kind of relate a lot to the final girl characters in films. So like seeing Sydney in Scream, or actually Chris Higgins in Friday the 13th Part 3, and then of course Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. And I always kind of said, like, when you go through something so crazy where it's hard to relate to people because of the things you went through were so kind of insane, you know, the horror films made perfect sense. And so I always feel like, you know, making a film is so hard that you should make it personal. It's almost like going to getting a PhD in grad school. It's like, it better be personal, because that's like 7 years of your life that you need to, you know, consistently be moving it forward. And so it was crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about the cinematography. The cinematography was phenomenal. I love the certain shots, and then the certain shots over the forest. Did you use like a drone?
Yeah, so we used a drone for the overhead forest shots, because one thing I wanted to do with the film is make it feel like you're really there at the camp. I wanted the camp to feel like a part of the story just as much as the characters. And so, you know, the crickets at night, you know, the forest, the trees, all that kind of stuff. And so we did the drones over the camp, and then it was my first time shooting anamorphic. I used Atlas anamorphic lenses, 40 millimeter, 65 millimeter, and 100 millimeter. Most of it I shot at a 40, which is almost like a 20 millimeter equivalent frame, but it's really great. The lenses are definitely softer. And so I think it kind of gave us that 80s look, because I think one thing I love about, I wanted the film to feel like it was a forgotten film from the 80s, like a forgotten horror franchise. And like when you see it, you're like, where was this film at? I'm just hearing about this now. Where was this at? You know? And I think the look of that, you have to go back to that style of cinematography with where it's a softer image. It's not crisp. You're not like 8K and compressing it, you know, or shooting on Zeiss primes and stuff, you know. So I think the anamorphic was fun. Plus, it's like, if you're going to shoot I always kind of feel like if you only get a chance to do one, you might only ever get a chance to do your one film. So I'm like, might as well shoot it anamorphic. And then I go back to Halloween with John Carpenter shooting that, you know, Dean Cundy shot that in anamorphic. So it's like, why not, you know? So
let's talk about some of the cool kill scenes. One of my favorite kill scenes was where one of the final girls got it right through the screen door with the axe. So was that did you guys go over that? It was choreographed?
Yeah, we were running the kind of brilliance of that was Lezzo, who was the stunt coordinator and was also under the mask. They had a dance background, so most of the actors came out of the University of Illinois' BFA acting program. And Lezzo came out of that program. He had a dance background, and he was really good at choreographing. You know, he had some fight choreography, and then also Farboda, or Ren, who he was, you know, or who they were fighting against. You know, she also. So they worked out that routine a lot, and then we shot it, you know, on the wides and the masters, and then. I probably edited that scene more than any other scene in the whole film. And then finally, I sent it to Lezzo, and they gave me a lot of notes on that scene as well. It's like, I want to see the kick come out a little bit more, all these kinds of things. And it just made it, you know, it's such an intense, I think the thing with kills sometimes is we get into the gore, and oh man, it's crazy. But it's very intimate. You know, it's like if you go back to Saving Private Ryan, there's a scene where they're fighting over this knife as it's going into the guy's chest, and it's very intimate. And so I wanted to have that feeling of intimacy in this scene. And then finally, you know, they're fighting for their life, and then finally, you know, the thing that happens. But yeah.
The one scene I liked, you know, that was very intense, and I really felt it, was the swimming pool scene. And then of course, my favorite part was, quote this off a, John Cusack movie, Death by Stereo.
Yeah. No, it was fun. Yeah, because there's some references to Lost Boys throughout the film, and then yeah, with Say Anything, and so I thought that was kind of fun because it's the film is set in 1991, and so I wanted to have those 80s references because I feel like I'm Gen X, and so I feel like 80s references are a very important part of like my generation, like referencing like, different strokes and all those kinds of things and like get it, all that stuff. So like so I felt like they should be existing in that world too, where he would see something and be like, oh my God, like Lost Boys, like this is crazy, and sometimes it's in those moments when everything is so insane that you just find that bit of humor where you're like, well, I can't, this is so nuts, and so I think that was, but the pool sequence, yeah, I was in the pool with the actors freezing. So we were shooting in a 360 and then we were shooting inserts, and I had a fish tank that the camera was in, and I had it like rigged up so I would not drop it, because I was like, if I dropped it, there goes our camera. So, and I was shooting on a Red Epic Dragon with the anamorphic lens, so I basically crammed it in this fish tank, and then I could kind of, because I wanted it to feel like you could see the water edge, a bit, and this just the insanity of what is happening in that scene too. So.
Yeah, tell me about the mask. How was that mask made? It looked like Fleshlight kind of.
Yeah, there's a company in Minnesota called Faux Real, and they actually had the mask already online. I knew I wanted to get like a skull mask for the film, and I kept looking, and all the latex skull masks to me were like ill-fitting. The mask was kind of goofy looking. It wasn't scary, and I kept going back to this emotionless, dead, kind of creepy mask. And so I ordered it online. It came to my house. I did a test screening. I can hold this if you. I did a test screening at my house, and where I just put it on and I walked. Kind of like the scene in Halloween when like it comes, like the shape comes out of the background behind Jamie Lee Curtis, and I saw that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally the one. And so I emailed them, and thankfully they were gracious enough to let us use the mask for the film, because I just loved it. And I go back to Wes Craven with the Scream mask, where it's like it was a mask that was already existing, and he just kept going back to something about the masks. And I think going back to the early 90s, like, biker shorts, lycra biker shorts, and the mask was basically lycra. And so I thought it'd be fun to have something very form-fitting, where you could get a sense that there was somebody under the mask,
That's pretty wild. The ending was pretty twisted, that all played off. I mean, I didn't know that was going that way. It was like a curveball.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the thing to go to, like, my personal history with the kind of person that I was, I survived. I went through a lot of gaslighting, and I think the movie, it has a lot to do with that. And so the film actually really the way I set it up kind of gaslights the audience, because you're thinking one thing, and then all of a sudden it goes completely sideways, and you're like, what? And I think it goes to that. I think, growing up in the 80s, the killers were like huge and massive and powerful, and I felt like the person that I kind of lived through was not a huge, massive person, but so cunning and devious and manipulative and terrifying that, like, yeah, so let's kind of go there. Let's show that kind of a villain, a little bit different than your normal, And
also, you showed your film at a drive-in theater, and at the time, Halloween Ends was also playing.
Yeah. We had our drive-in premiere opposite Halloween Ends on October 13th at the Harvest Moon Drive-in in Gibson City, Illinois, and when they gave us the date, I was like terrified. I'm like, oh no, like it's gonna be like a packed lot over there, and it's just gonna be like me in the back of my truck watching this film. But amazingly, we outsold Halloween Ends, so it was kind of incredible. And I think I love drive-ins. I grew up going to drive-in theaters. And I think there's something very like, Americana about drive-ins, and then also Americana about slasher films. So to see a slasher film at a drive-in is kind of perfect. And so it was a blast, and the cast came out and the crew, and everybody just had a good time, So it was really fun.
I love how you filmed it at a Boy Scout camp. That kind of brought me memories, because I used to go to Boy Scouts every summer, and I do remember, like times like campfires and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And at nighttime, when you're out in the middle of the woods, sometimes it gets like real creepy.
Oh yeah, Well, it was good. It was good because it was also during COVID. So, like, I'd worked on a film called Revealer the previous summer, and that just came out on Shudder, and that was one of the first films that got up to production in Illinois. After that, the SAG Safeway Forward, the white papers came out, and so when I was on that film, I realized, okay, I'm seeing how we're doing the COVID protocols. We can do it in our film, and plus the fact that we were basically outdoors most of the time, so it was much, less risky, because we didn't have a lot of money. So if anyone got sick, that would have been it, But the camp was great, and I wrote the script basically to a lot of the locations at the camp. So I would go there for like months at a time and just keep going there and just, oh, this is really cool. I like that bridge over there. I like this place. I like that pool. This kitchen is awesome. So just kind of like starting to see the movie develop in your head before you ever even do the story clock and do the structure and the the beat sheet and all the save the cat stuff,
I love how popular nowadays for people, filmmakers will do like a bonus scene after the credits.
Right.
I love how you tease that to end that final scene.
Oh yeah, thanks. It's funny. Someone was saying like, there's not enough blood in the film, and so I was like, all right, we should probably get some more blood in the film. So there was a guy I did a podcast with early on. He's like, if you make this film, man, you get your Kickstarter going. Like, you can kill me in the film. And so I called him up one day. I'm like, hey man, like, you mind if I kill you in the film? So he came up. He was a trooper, and we put blood all over his head. He laid on the ground, and then we did like the 3 shots that comprised the ending, because I wanted to kind of sell a little bit more what's coming next, and also to kind of go to the psychology of like serial killers, where they do go to the sites. Sometimes they will go to help out or insert themselves in investigations. I was in Aurora, Illinois, and there was a serial killer in my town who abducted a girl that was like my age. He kind of killed a woman that my mom worked with at a hospital, and so it was. And that person did the same kind of thing. They inserted themselves into that. So I kind of wanted to go back to like, what if Ted Bundy was the guy in these slasher movies kind of thing? Like bring more of that real psychology. But, it's my first film, so I'm still rough around the edges.
That's pretty good. And also, you're thinking about doing a trilogy of films too.
Yeah. So definitely the sequel is because I basically planned them around kind of the 3 stages of PTSD. So the first film, the theme is really about fight or flight. So that's why it's like once it hits, it's like a roller coaster to the end. And a lot of what's happened is based around fight or flight. Like the main characters, one of the huge reasons she lives as long as she does is because of that fight or flight. And then the second one's a little bit more of the chaos, where you're trying to sort out what's real and what's not. Like when you go through gaslighting, someone has kind of like been able to shape your world and contort it in such a way where like what you think is real is not, and what is real is you don't even know anymore. And so I think as I was getting out of that space, I had to go through a lot of that, of figuring out like what is real. I mean, it was really, it's crazy. So anyway.
All right. So where can everybody find you and follow your upcoming project?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's a Final Summer Movie. On TikTok, Final Summer Movie. And on Facebook, Final Summer Movie also. And then we got distribution, and I'm just finishing up the QC on the deliverables right now, which is a lot of fun. And then we'll be streaming. We should be just streaming this summer. And then I'd love to do some physical releases too, because I love, the Blu-ray stuff. Excuse me. So yeah. And then I think there's going to be another drive-in screening coming up also with another really awesome group of people too. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, man.